Next up in our conversation with Susan Shelton, Susan and I are talking about the rules around having a certified food protection manager on premises. And so you don't have to clutch your pearls just this soon, but having that certified food protection manager, the way that it was negotiated, and you can learn more about it by listening to the podcast, is that not every kitchen manager has to be certified. In fact, the rules around this are pretty generous. You have to have someone connected to your operations that is going to have that certification, proves that they're staying updated with this information, and that they're working with your kitchen employees or kitchen leadership to ensure that this plan, that as it's structured, is in place within your restaurants. And so let's get to it. Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our conversation with Susan Shelton from the Washington State's Department of Health, and we're talking about changes in the retail food code. My name's Andy Cook. I'm your host, and I'm going to be playing the role of restaurant guy / tell me what I don't know. By the way, we hadn't talked about this in part one, but these changes are technically in effect. They came into effect in full force March of 2022, but there's a grace period. And so this is going to give every one of you a chance to get ahead of that grace period, which is going to end in September. Is that right?
Right. So we're calling it an educational period just to make sure, everyone's on the same page. And it does end at the end of August, so beginning September 1.
Yeah. And I think the topic we're going to be talking about today is probably one that's going to require the most planning. And that is there's been some shifts in having a certified food protection manager on staff.
It's always been an option for businesses to have a certified food protection manager. It's an add-on for managers. A lot of facilities, food establishments do have access to it, and so they use that availability. It's really a manager training program. It's always been an option, and what it would qualify you for is something called demonstration of knowledge. If you have that certificate, like I can just prove to you that I have the knowledge in order, to be a manager. However, this new requirement is going to make sure that at least one employee with each business actually has that certificate. So they don't have to be on premises, they don't have to be on shift, but you have to have access to one that actually has that certificate. The code doesn't require the individual to even be on premises necessarily. The code requires that certified food protection manager actually makes sure that the policies and procedures are correct and that the persons in charge are trained. So maybe somebody calls it a shift manager or a shift lead. We call them the persons in charge. Whoever is there that is actually, ensuring the food safety on premises during the shift, that's what we call the person in charge. So the certified food protection manager would say, I will train that individual. Okay, so the person in charge doesn't have to have the certificate, but they have to have a resource that they can reach out to. And then there's a little bit of, oversight there too, so that the certified food protection manager is saying, yes, I can make sure these staff are trained properly. So technically they don't have to be there. And that's a change that Washington made. In the federal model code, yes, the certified food protection manager has to be there every shift. And we're like, well, we don't have that kind of capacity. So we just made it so that the person in charge has to have the same level of knowledge, but they can work with somebody else that has a certificate.
Okay. So I'm going to throw an analogy at you. You can tell me if I'm on point. A health card is like having a high school diploma. Having a certified food protection manager is like having a bachelor's degree.
Yeah. And I think it's a great analogy. If you have, so your average food worker has the food worker card. Everyone is required to have the food worker card. You have to have people that have a little bit more. A high school diploma for me is somebody that's a person in charge. It's like, okay, we've trained them a little bit more than we've done, some of our other food workers. So the person in charge is like, man, I can tell you what happens if the sewage backs up. I can tell you what I should do if an employee is ill. I can, they're the ones that people come to. So I'm like, okay, I have the food worker card and I have they aren't required to have a high school diploma, but going through the analogy.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, whoa, but wait a second, you've gone above and beyond, what I generally know. I need to reach out to my certified food protection manager. So yes, they have potentially, like you said, maybe that college degree, like you gave the example. So yeah, it's a little bit beyond just the basics.
Okay.
I think that's a great analogy though. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think what was wrong with the analogy is now I'm thinking, oh my God, that's 4 years. But we're talking about a matter of hours. So the process, tell me about the process. So let's use ServSafe Manager as an example. And I believe there are 5 accredited systems that you could get those people plugged into?
So traditionally, there have been 5. However, there was a new one that was added a couple of years ago. So now there are
Okay.
6.
Okay.
ServSafe is probably one of the longest standing. I think that's the one that a lot of industry are really keyed into because it's got a lot of history. So we can
Right.
use ServSafe as an example, but there are 5 others. And so what they are, they're nationally accredited. And what's actually accredited is the exam.
Mhm.
And so the exam is about 80 questions, 80, 100 questions, somewhere in that range. It usually takes people about 2 hours to take it. But what's key is that you have to prepare to take it, right? So
Right.
going back to our analogy of school, this is kind of like passing a pretty major exam. I mean, you can't just generally walk into it and say, "Oh, I'm ready to take it." It's like, no, you need to, study and make sure you understand the words that are used, the concepts. It's all about food safety, all about, management and oversight, and but it's pretty comprehensive. And so the key would be to make sure people are prepared. The actual exam doesn't take that long, 2 hours, but sometimes it
Right.
takes people quite a while to actually prepare to take it.
And do these accredited programs offer classes along
Some
with
of
a
them
proctored
do.
exam? Okay.
Yeah. Some of them
Okay.
do. But some of them, again, what the certification is the exam. So we don't really measure and monitor the training that goes with it. And so,
Mhm.
but some of them do. Like, for example, your example with ServSafe, that one does have a pretty robust training system that also accompanies. You can choose, whether you want to take the training or just the exam. But yes, they definitely have materials out there. They have online training. They have in-person training options that you could use to make sure staff are prepared. There are also some example tests probably online, that you could say, okay, let me see if I'm even close. Let me see if I could pass this,
Right.
just kind of self-study to see, because again, it's potentially surprising for some because if you're used to the food worker card program, that's a pretty, it's like a first aid, right? It's like,
Mhm.
okay, that's just basic first aid. Now we're getting you up to the EMT level. So we want to make
Right.
sure that you feel
Another good
comfortable taking that
analogy.
exam, right?
Bravo. English isn't always the first language. I would bet my savings that there are Spanish options, but these classes they cover many different languages.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we made the modification for people to have a resource that has a certificate, even if it's not somebody that's directly on staff, because of the language barrier. So it's definitely Spanish. Pretty much all of them offer it in Spanish. However, that's the other key component. I told you that there were 6 that actually provide. Each of them have some different language options, and so traditionally, what it's going to be for the vast majority of them is going to be Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese. Um, and then after that, it starts getting a little bit more difficult to find the language that you need.
Cool. And I also just want to kind of reiterate, because I know of a lot of my clients, restaurant owners. They have this trusted kitchen manager, chef, whatever positional title that they get, where they weren't born in this country. What I'm hearing is, if your organization fits into into that mold, you, the restaurant owner, or one of your members of the leadership team that I think are going to have some longevity with you, that person can be certified on their behalf, and then they can coordinate together, get that person in charge up to speed.
For me, that's what's ideal. We want to
Yeah.
have somebody that is trusted, that can actually speak, like you said, both languages clearly. So it's not just, I'm not saying the English language, I'm saying the food safety requirements language.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
that's the language that we're talking about. And I want to make sure it gets translated and, be able to be understood by the receiving group. And so, yes, that's exactly what we're hoping for. And so you might have several stores, right, that are, like you said, they're maybe smaller. They have English as a second language, or just not English at all as a language. They have a lot of traditional languages, but if they have one, kind of cohort, a person that can help them, then that person can be the certified food protection manager for multiple locations. The whole goal is to help businesses be able to go, yes, this is the system that works for me. I understand. I can train employees. We've got it under control. We call it active managerial control. That's what our goal is to get everybody up to that same level to go, it's not being reactive. You're not saying, oh, the health inspector said I did something wrong. It's like you're looking at it for risks and you're like, I've got this under control, whether the
Right.
health inspector's here or not. And so we're hoping that the person in charge can work with the certified food protection manager. Again, it can be, one certified manager for several establishments and say, hey, I need help with this, outside of what the health departments when they're doing inspections. We've done some extensions on our timelines. This is one of the biggest extensions. This is the only one we have that's extended until March of 2023. So we talked about how there's a little bit of an educational visit until, the end of summer. So beginning September 1, we're going to start really looking at, making sure people are in compliance and following the code. But the certified food protection manager, we're going to give it extra time to get prepared for that. Find your certified food protection manager, make sure that they get their certificate, you have access to it. That will not be required again until March of 2023. So ask questions now. We'll help you steer through it, but be ready for that one in March of next year.
I'll just throw a little bit of extra something on that. Is there's a few economies that go into restaurants, the financial economy, the attention economy, and the procrastination economy. If you're prone to procrastinate, I say do it now, but don't do it forever, because once we get closer to this time in 2023, those classes are going to be full. Don't be the last procrastinator. If you're not ready to act now, act soon. Susan, let's wrap this one up and get ready for the next one. The next one we're going to be talking about is employee health.